What really happened to the stars of Storage Wars? The ones who made us laugh, cheer, and wonder what treasure might be hiding behind a rusty lock. For years, they were part of our lives, rolling into auctions with swagger, taking risks on dusty lockers, and sometimes walking away with nothing but disappointment. Then, without warning, some of the most familiar faces vanished. Fans began to ask, did tragedy strike? Did the money dry up? Were there bitter fights behind the cameras? Or did they simply choose to disappear? The truth is stranger than the rumors. Behind the scenes, these larger-than-life personalities faced struggles that no camera ever captured. Life-threatening health scares, heartbreaking breakups, and the kind of personal battles that changed them forever. This is the untold story of what really happened to the stars of Storage Wars. And once you hear it, you'll never look at the show the same way again. When fans think of Storage Wars, one name always rises above the rest: Barry Weiss. To some, he was the eccentric uncle they wished they had, rolling up to auctions in one of his many classic cars, sunglasses perched just right, gloves on his hands, and that unmistakable grin that said he was there for fun, not just profit. Unlike the others who calculated every bid, Barry brought something different: joy, curiosity, and a sense of adventure that reminded viewers why they loved the show in the first place. While most bidders eyed lockers like walking calculators, Barry treated them as treasure chests. A dusty box wasn't just junk to be flipped. It was a story waiting to be uncovered. When he stumbled across an old jukebox, he talked more about the music it once played than about how much he could sell it for. When he unearthed antique furniture, he explained its craftsmanship instead of rushing to an appraiser. Barry didn't just buy storage units, he celebrated them. He had already made his fortune in the wholesale produce business long before Storage Wars. So for him, this wasn't survival. It was entertainment, exploration, and sometimes mischief. That freedom gave him something no one else on the show had: the ability to walk away without caring. He'd take risks others wouldn't dare, bidding on units that looked worthless, just because something inside intrigued him. And he'd laugh off losses without complaint, reminding fans that the thrill wasn't always in winning. It was in the not knowing. Barry became the soul of Storage Wars, the kind of character who turned even the dullest finds into something worth watching. But just 4 seasons in, Barry quietly stepped away. No big fight with producers, no dramatic exit, no bitter feuds. He simply decided it was time to move on, as if closing a favorite book and putting it gently back on the shelf. Fans were heartbroken, but they understood. Barry had never seemed hungry for the spotlight. He was just a man who let us ride along on his adventures. For years after, Barry returned to his passions: collecting cars, chasing antiques, and enjoying life without the pressure of television. He popped up occasionally in interviews or appearances, still carrying that warm smile, still the same old Barry. Life was good, until everything changed in 2019. That year, Barry's world flipped in an instant. While riding his motorcycle through Los Angeles, he was struck in a devastating crash. The accident left him with multiple broken bones, serious chest and leg injuries, and internal damage so severe that fans feared the worst. The man who once strolled into auctions with unshakable confidence now fought for his life in a hospital bed. His recovery was long, grueling, and painful. Multiple surgeries, endless rehabilitation, and months of learning to do even the simplest tasks again. The hands that once flipped through antiques had to relearn their strength. The legs that carried him into countless storage units had to be taught how to walk again without unbearable pain. For someone who had lived his life in motion, the stillness was torture. And yet, Barry's spirit never broke. The same curiosity and patience that made him beloved on Storage Wars became his secret weapon in recovery. He approached healing like another adventure, one step at a time, refusing to let frustration overwhelm him. When he eventually appeared in public again, fans saw a changed man. He moved slower, spoke more carefully, but his humor and warmth remained. The accident had scarred his body, but it hadn't dimmed his light. Barry Weiss, the collector, the eccentric, the soul of Storage Wars, reminded the world that true treasure isn't gold or antiques. It's resilience, joy, and the ability to keep moving forward even when life tries to stop you. If Barry Weiss was the soul of Storage Wars, then Dave Hester was its sharp edge. From the very first episode, he positioned himself as the villain audiences loved to hate. Loud, brash, and armed with his infamous catchphrase, "Yup!" Dave thrived on stirring the pot. He didn't just want to win lockers, he wanted to dominate the room. He would outbid by a single dollar just to rattle competitors. And when he won, he made sure everyone knew it. Viewers tuned in not just for the treasures hidden in storage units, but to see who would dare to go toe-to-toe with Dave Hester. But beneath the bravado was a man deeply driven by competition and business. Dave had been an auction warrior long before the cameras arrived, with years of experience in buying and reselling. To him, every locker was a battle, and every rival was a target. The fame from Storage Wars only amplified his larger-than-life persona, making him one of the most polarizing figures in reality TV. Then, in 2018, his world changed overnight. Late one evening, Dave suffered a sudden stroke. In an instant, the man known for his booming voice and relentless confidence found himself unable to speak clearly, unable to move with precision, lying in a hospital bed instead of standing in front of an auction crowd. For someone who prided himself on control, it was a devastating blow. Rehab was slow, grueling, and humbling. He had to relearn basic coordination, regain his strength, and rebuild the very presence that made him famous. Fans who had seen him as a ruthless player now saw a different side, a man vulnerable, human, and fighting for his life. For months, Dave disappeared from the show and from public view. Whispers spread. Was he finished? Would he ever come back? Was this the end of his auction career? But like any true competitor, Dave refused to stay down. Bit by bit, he fought his way back, returning to the auction world even if he wasn't the same as before. When he reappeared, there was a noticeable change. The fire was still there, but it burned differently. He was calmer, more deliberate, less obsessed with constant confrontation. The man who once thrived on chaos now seemed to value steadiness. He still worked in auctions and resale, but with a new perspective. Life could be taken away in a moment, and survival was the greatest win of all. For fans, it was a reminder that even the loudest voice can go silent, and that sometimes it takes losing everything to truly understand what matters. Dave Hester, once the villain, had become a survivor. When Ivy Calvin stepped into Storage Wars, it wasn't a quiet entrance. He carried himself with the swagger of a man who had already won before the bidding even started. A former arena football player and mixed martial artist, Ivy brought with him the presence of an athlete, the kind of confidence that made people move aside when he walked in. He was quickly nicknamed the King of Palmdale, and he lived up to it with a keen eye that could spot value hidden beneath dust and broken furniture. Ivy wasn't just a bidder, he was a strategist. While others got caught up in the drama of outbidding one another, Ivy scanned lockers with precision, instantly calculating resale value and potential profit. His approach wasn't reckless. It was calculated, disciplined, and rooted in his competitive background. For him, auctions were just another arena, another battlefield where preparation and skill made all the difference. Fans loved his booming laugh, his sharp wit, and his ability to turn even the dullest locker into a win. Beyond the auctions, Ivy ran his resale shop, Grandma's Attic, with the same order and discipline he carried into his bids. Every item had a place, every sale had a purpose. He wasn't just chasing profit, he was building something lasting. But over time, fans noticed his presence on the show became less frequent. The booming laugh, the bold bids, the unstoppable energy. Suddenly, it wasn't there every episode. Whispers began. Had Ivy lost interest? Was he done with storage wars? Or was there something more? The truth was simpler, and yet more meaningful. Away from the cameras, Ivy was choosing to focus on his health and his family. The man who had once fought in football fields and MMA cages understood the toll that constant stress could take. He began to pull back, not because he couldn't compete, but because he didn't need to prove anything anymore. In later appearances, fans saw a new side of Ivy, one where his sons joined him at auctions, turning what had once been fierce competition into family bonding. The battles for dusty lockers transformed into lessons for the next generation. Moments where Ivy could pass down his instincts, his discipline, and his love for the chase. For viewers, it was a reminder that not all victories are about money or bragging rights. Sometimes, the greatest triumph is stepping back, prioritizing health, and turning the spotlight toward family. Ivy Calvin didn't fade because he lost. He stepped aside because he had already won. If Barry Weiss was the eccentric adventurer and Dave Hester the ruthless villain, then Darrell Sheets was the wild gambler who lived for the thrill of risk. Nicknamed the Gambler, Darrell earned that reputation by throwing serious money at lockers that others wouldn't dare touch, convinced that inside waited the kind of jackpot that could change everything. He thrived on adrenaline, bidding big and living bigger, and he often had his son Brandon by his side, passing down the lessons of risk and reward. Sometimes, those risks paid off spectacularly. Darrell became famous for scoring some of the biggest finds in Storage Wars history, including artwork, rare collectibles, and treasures worth thousands. But sometimes his bets flopped, leaving him with little more than a pile of junk. And that was the magic of Darrell Sheets. He wasn't afraid to lose. For him, the gamble was part of the fun, part of the chase. And fans loved him for it. He wasn't calculating or cautious. He was bold, brash, and unafraid to risk it all. Yet behind the confidence and the laughter, life had a way of reminding him that some gambles come at too high a price. In early 2019, everything changed when Darrell suddenly felt severe chest pains. At first, he brushed it off, assuming it was just exhaustion or stress. But the pain grew worse, sharper, until he was rushed to the hospital. There, doctors confirmed the unthinkable. Darrell was in the middle of a massive heart attack. For a man who had lived his life chasing thrills and adrenaline, the irony was cruel. He wasn't standing at an auction block or celebrating a big win. He was fighting for his life. The heart attack was severe, and recovery was long and sobering. Darrell, the man who had once seemed unstoppable, had to slow down, not by choice, but by necessity. The auctions he loved became rarer. His presence on the show faded, and fans noticed the silence, where his big personality used to fill the screen. For those who followed his journey, it was heartbreaking. The gambler who risked it all in the name of adventure was now being forced to play carefully, to step back from the chaos that defined him. But in a way, Darrell's story was a lesson to everyone watching. Life is the greatest gamble of all, and sometimes the biggest wins aren't about money or treasures. They're about survival, family, and the chance to see another day. His absence left a gap in Storage Wars that could never truly be filled. The thrill of his wild bets, his fearless attitude, and his infectious energy reminded fans why they loved the show. And even though health forced him to step back, Darrell Sheets' legacy as the gambler lives on, proof that some risks, no matter how dangerous, are worth taking for the memories they leave behind. If there was ever a duo that captured the heart of Storage Wars, it was Brandi Passante and Jarrod Schultz. From the very first time they appeared, they felt like the couple next door, the pair you couldn't help but root for even when they were bickering. Their chemistry was undeniable, built on a constant push and pull that made every scene with them entertaining. Brandi was sharp, focused, and practical, carefully analyzing lockers and weighing risks before spending a dime. Jarrod, on the other hand, was impulsive, restless, and often ready to dive in head first, convinced that fortune favored the bold. Watching them together was like watching two sides of the same coin battle it out in real time. Fans loved the way Brandi rolled her eyes at Jarrod's reckless bids, only for him to grin when her instincts turned out to be right. They weren't polished or perfect, but that was the charm. They were real, relatable, and always fun to watch. Together they managed a thrift store, taking their winnings and turning them into cash, proving that their partnership wasn't just about television. It was about building something tangible. But while their light-hearted banter won fans over, behind the cameras life was far less playful. Their relationship was strained, the pressures of business, family, and fame all pulling at the seams. By 2020, without drama or theatrics, the news slipped out quietly. Brandi and Jarrod had broken up. There was no on-screen confrontation, no big reveal, just silence, where once there had been laughter and arguments. Later, Brandi hinted that their relationship had been difficult, even painful at times. She didn't go into full detail, but her words were enough to let fans know that what looked like playful banter on screen often masked real struggles. After the breakup, Brandi shifted her attention away from the demanding schedules of filming and toward her children, focusing on giving them stability and a life away from the constant chaos of reality TV. Jarrod, for his part, also faded from the spotlight. The couple that once brought so much energy to the show was gone, leaving a void that couldn't be filled by anyone else. Their presence had been more than entertainment. It had been a reminder that Storage Wars wasn't just about profits or antiques, but about people, relationships, and the human stories behind the bids. Without them, the show felt different. Fans didn't just miss Brandi or Jarrod individually, they missed the dynamic, the balancing act, the comedy and the tension that came from watching them together. They proved that sometimes the real treasure isn't found in a dusty locker, but in the spark between two people, even if that spark doesn't last forever. When Renee and Casey joined Storage Wars, they brought an energy unlike anyone else. Renee's booming voice and bold confidence made him impossible to ignore, while Casey's calm, steady presence balanced him perfectly. They weren't just another couple on the show, they were a true team, both in business and in life. Renee had grown up in the resale world, practically raised among antiques, collectibles, and auctions. He had an instinct for spotting value that came from years of experience, and his sharp eye often allowed him to find treasures others overlooked. Casey, on the other hand, added her own strengths: organization, attention to detail, and the ability to see potential where others saw clutter. Together, they turned every locker into a joint mission, proving that their partnership was built on trust, respect, and a shared drive to succeed. Viewers loved watching them work as a unit. Renee would throw out bold bids, sometimes intimidating rivals with his sheer confidence, while Casey kept him grounded, offering perspective and balance when risks grew too high. Their playful interactions revealed a marriage rooted in mutual understanding. They celebrated victories together, laughed off failures, and always reminded audiences that success wasn't just about money. It was about working side by side with someone who had your back. Over time, they built a reputation as one of the most reliable teams in storage wars, combining Renee's boldness with Casey's practicality. But life has a way of shifting priorities, and in 2023, tragedy struck their family. Renee's father passed away after a short but difficult battle with lung cancer. The loss was a heavy blow, not only because of the bond between father and son, but because Renee's passion for antiques and the resale business had been inspired by his father's influence. The grief was visible in his voice as he spoke about it publicly, thanking fans for their support and leaning on Casey and his family for strength. For viewers, the moment was a reminder that behind the loud bidding and confident persona was a man shaped by family, heritage, and love. After that loss, the Nazota's focus seemed to shift. The pursuit of the next big locker or the largest profit wasn't the only priority anymore. It became about cherishing family, honoring legacy, and finding meaning beyond the chase. Their appearances on Storage Wars carried new weight, not just as entertainment, but as a reflection of resilience. Fans who had once cheered for their wins now admired the strength it took to carry on after heartbreak. Together, Renee and Casey showed that sometimes the greatest treasures aren't found in dusty lockers. They're found in the bonds that hold families together when life tests them the most. Storage Wars wouldn't have been the same without the voices that kept the auctions alive. And at the center of it all were Dan and Laura Dotson. Dan's rapid-fire chant was the heartbeat of the show, able to turn a pile of dusty boxes into something exciting, while Laura's warmth and charisma kept the atmosphere light even in tense bidding wars. Together, they were more than auctioneers. They were the glue that held the show together. But in 2014, their world nearly collapsed. One morning, Dan woke up with blurred vision, and within minutes, he collapsed. Laura rushed him to the hospital, where doctors discovered a brain aneurysm. The situation was critical, and without immediate surgery, he might not survive. The operation was risky, and the recovery was grueling. But with Laura at his side every step of the way, Dan pulled through. When he eventually returned to the auction block, fans noticed he moved a little slower, but his voice and spirit remained intact. The scare changed them, making their smiles brighter, their laughs deeper, and their presence on the show more meaningful than ever. Then there was Mary Padian, who first captured attention on Storage Wars, Texas, before making her way into the original series. Unlike many bidders who focused strictly on profits, Mary approached auctions with creativity and imagination. Nicknamed the Junkster, she had a knack for taking what others saw as trash and transforming it into something beautiful. Her background in design and journalism gave her a unique perspective, and she quickly became a fan favorite for her quirky style, boundless enthusiasm, and warm personality. But over time, Mary began to fade from the show. She turned her attention toward her online store, where she could sell her repurposed creations directly to customers, and she focused on traveling and pursuing personal projects. Though no longer a regular face on television, she left a legacy of turning forgotten pieces into treasures, reminding fans that value isn't always about money. It can be about imagination. Emily Wares was another fresh face who brought new energy when she joined in Season 10. At just 27 years old, She was already an award-winning auctioneer, trained by her father in Iowa, and celebrated for her lightning-fast chant and professional skill. She broke stereotypes in a field often dominated by older men, impressing both bidders and viewers with her confidence. Yet her time on the show was short-lived. Emily chose to step away to focus on her personal life, marrying her longtime partner, starting a family, and even pursuing her passion for singing at local events. Though her run on Storage Wars was brief, it proved that the next generation of auctioneers was ready to carry the torch in new and exciting ways. These figures, Dan and Laura, Mary, Emily, showed that Storage Wars was more than a competition. It was a stage for resilience, creativity, and reinvention. They reminded viewers that behind the fast-talking chants and dramatic bids were real people, facing life's struggles, chasing dreams, and proving that sometimes the true treasures lie not in storage lockers, but in the journeys of the people who dared to open them. Kenny Crossley was one of those personalities who didn't need to try hard to stand out. With his deep Southern drawl, infectious laugh, and knack for turning even the dullest locker into a comedy routine, Kenny quickly became a fan favorite. Originally from New Orleans, his path to Storage Wars wasn't the same as the others. Before auctions, Kenny had worked in law enforcement, dabbled in business, and held more than a few odd jobs. It was his friendship with Barry Weiss that pulled him into the spotlight. At first, Kenny appeared alongside Barry, helping him hunt through bizarre finds and joining in on his eccentric adventures. Viewers loved the dynamic, the straight-shooting Kenny paired with the unpredictable Barry. When Barry eventually left the show, Kenny stayed, stepping out from the shadows and carving his own place in the cast. Unlike the others, Kenny didn't obsess over winning big. He wasn't the type to get into heated bidding wars or throw down thousands on a risky unit. Instead, he picked his spots carefully, often targeting smaller lockers with quirky treasures that fit his playful personality. Fans loved his reactions, his one-liners, and the way he turned every discovery into a story. He wasn't just a bidder, he was entertainment, a reminder that Storage Wars was supposed to be fun. But like so many of his castmates, Kenny began appearing less and less. There were no dramatic exits, no bitter feuds with producers. He simply shifted his focus. He launched his own ventures, from a clothing line to a donut shop, proving he was more than just a reality TV star. His absence left fans wondering where he went, with many still posting online hoping for his return. Kenny represented something special about Storage Wars. He reminded audiences that not every moment had to be cutthroat or serious, that laughter and personality were just as valuable as antiques and collectibles. In many ways, he carried the same spirit Barry Weiss once brought: the joy of discovery, the humor in the unexpected, the fun in the unknown. As the years passed and familiar faces disappeared from Storage Wars, one thing became clear. The show was never really about lockers full of forgotten belongings. It was about the people who opened them. From Barry's adventures to Dave's redemption, from Ivy's family focus to Brandy and Jarrod's complicated love story, from Darrell's risks to Renee and Casey's resilience, each character gave viewers more than entertainment. They gave them human stories filled with triumphs, losses, and second chances. Storage Wars may not dominate television like it once did, but its legacy lives on in the lives of those who made it unforgettable. The stars may have stepped back, slowed down, or faced struggles that took them away from the spotlight, but they remain etched in the memories of fans who tuned in not just to see what was inside a storage unit, but to see the people brave enough to open it.